Your voice, your opinion, your community. Fact TV, free speech protected.
Well, hello. I'm Sean Roberon. I'm here with Garrett and Colby, and we're part of what's called VAC, Vermont Armored Combat. And we're looking to be creating this show that's basically about armored combat, the thing that we do, as kind of a lead-in to an event that we're hosting in Bellows Falls on June 1st. And so first off, we'd like to say who we are and how we're involved with armored combat. So yeah, I'm Sean Roberon, and I'm our team captain, and so it's my job to kind of wrangle fighters together, make sure the fighters coming in all kind of fit in with our group, and to run our melee group, which has yet to really start because of numbers, but eventually we'll get there.
Garrett, I'm just a regular average guy on the team and fighting for Sean's place someday. Count your days.
And I'm Colby, and I'm one of the founding members of the team. I came on with Will Alloway, who started our chapter, our club here. Our founder. So I started training with them a couple years ago and have been active ever since. And so it's been cool to see everything growing and our fighters start to branch out and go to different places and compete nationally, and also to see a melee team starting up here in the Vermont and New Hampshire border area.
And you're our treasurer.
And I'm the treasurer, yes. All the money's in a mason jar at home. Very important.
All $36.75.
And so now, what is armored combat? Can each of you answer that from your own point of view? Like, what is armored combat, Colby?
Sure. So armored combat essentially is it's a modern sport that is bringing back 14th century tournament fighting. So, essentially when knights weren't fighting at war during, the medieval period, they would go to these tournaments where they'd be able to show how, their different skills, different types of fighting styles, essentially as a way to, get higher pay, to be a more valued knight, a more valued freelancer. So there are some rules from that time period that are actually still, we use today. For tournament fighting, obviously it wasn't like gladiators. They shouldn't be dying in a tournament fight, just like we shouldn't be dying when we're doing armored combat sports. So we fight with blunted weapons. Is essentially what we're doing. So we're not trying to kill each other, but you are trying to essentially beat the other person in combat, usually with a point system, and and that's what we do using full steel armor that was made pretty much like it was made back, a couple hundred years ago. There are obviously some techniques and things that are made it easier for people to use now. Some materials are different, titanium for some folks instead of steel all the time, but we still. The leather straps are the same, the chainmail, same. That's what we do.
What about for you, Garrett?
Well, the way that I describe armored combat to my family and friends.
If somebody's just like, what is this, Garrett?
When they ask me,
are you...
what are you doing with that helmet you just spent almost $1,000 on? And I usually say that either A, I'm dressing up with a bunch of other fellas and gals that are really like knights and beating each other because it's fun, or I will just simply say that it is medieval MMA.
Yeah.
That's actually a good answer. Yeah, medieval MMA is a quick way to sum that up.
That's usually what I say to people when they ask what it is. In order to try to skip around any of the what it isn't, which we'll get into in just a second,
Right.
I just say it's medieval MMA. You're in armor and you're fighting another person with blunted weapons.
Right.
And that's as simple as I try to make it. But I'm really glad you started with kind of the history lesson there, because that gives everybody an understanding of the past of this sport and how it's kind of being brought back, rather than thinking that this is just some random hobby being created for the first time. It's a recreation of a sport. That's cool. That's cool.
Right.
It's an appreciation of a piece of history that has kind of disappeared for a while and just carried on in Dungeons and Dragons, and now we want to do the real thing.
Yes, but now let's get into the conversation. Like when we say Dungeons and Dragons or things like that, what is it not? What is Armored Combat not? Like the first thing that I've been asked is it like medieval times? Is it choreographed? Those are questions that I get. Like, is this a play? Is this LARP? Is this like HEMA? Is it SCA? Is it like all these questions that you get about? Is it like these things? And if somebody were to say, is it like medieval times? How would either of you respond to that?
Yeah. No, it's not like that at all, because we're not acting, and that's why I think this is such a cool sport, and why I got into it personally was as a kid I was always playing with sticks with my brother or whatever, lightsabers, and we just hit each other until one of us got hurt, started crying, and then it's not fun.
Don't tell that.
Exactly. And I didn't know, like as an adult, it's like, wow, it's really fun to like have that kind of that outlet of fighting, but karate didn't really do it for me. And the whole, I don't know, just other martial arts wasn't for me. I wanted to learn something with swords, which is just as somewhat of a nerdy guy myself, a little bit maybe. I thought that like that would be really cool. So when I found this, I realized like this is actually people who are committing to doing some really intense physical training to be able to wear this steel armor like people were doing hundreds of years ago, and swinging weapons that are heavy and made of steel, that if we weren't wearing this protective gear, we would die. Yeah. Even with the blunted weapons, we would get killed doing this stuff. And so for us to be able to do that safely and actually know what it feels like as much as we can to be in a fight with someone, like someone might have been, in the 1400s or whatever, I just think it's so cool. It just brings greater appreciation to to what that feels like to hold a sword and to be like, I'm gonna try and hit this guy in the head, and I hope he doesn't hit me while it's happening. And if he does, what does that feel like? And now I know what that feels like.
And it's like, but your point is, it's not choreographed.
But my point is
not acting.
My point is, it's not choreographed. It's a full contact sport. Just like if you're watching boxing or watching MMA when they're in that octagon, same deal. Like you're in there to win, to beat the other person that you're fighting.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of physical training that goes into it, because these sets of armor, I think, average like 50, 60 pounds.
Yeah, it can range anywhere between like 30 something and 60 something, right?
Even more.
Even more?
So 30 would be like, that's Williams, it's the lightest kit that we know of.
Right.
And that's just very sparse armor, very lightweight gear, sacrificing the dirt, like the protective quality of the armor for speed. And then, but if you're someone who's 6'5", you're already like close to 300 pounds already without armor, you're putting on a suit that's probably going to put another 100 pounds on you.
Because it has to cover up.
It has to cover up. It's just a lot of
suit.
steel,
Right.
And so it can range up to about around that 100-pound mark, depending on someone's size. I'd say, like mine is around 60 pounds, and I tried to make mine lightweight, getting titanium, and it's still 60 pounds. So.
And it's not LARP, because once again, it's not like meant to be theatrical. There isn't a story that's happening. That's something that I like to say about what it isn't, is that there's no story going on. We're not trying to play pretend in any way when it comes to like a character or something like that. You are just yourself, wearing armor, in a ring with another person, and you beat each other up. And you have metal weapons in your hand while you're doing it. And so it's none of these theatrical performances. It's not like that. It's a higher focus is on the sport aspect of it. And another thing that it is not, I would say, is it's not as dangerous as someone first thinks it is. when they think about that, and you're like, you swing axes at each other and maces and swords and things like that. For one, there's no stabbing. So like normally we're wearing all this armor, but a stab could really hurt someone still, even with blunt weapons. So we have rules that make sure everybody is very safe. Like the sport is focused as like this hobby amongst all these people who are very passionate. Nobody wants anybody else to get seriously injured, because then that's one less person to play with, one less person to fight against in a ring. So it's actually a lot safer than things like boxing. Because if you see two boxers go into a ring together and they beat each other up, at the end of the fight, both fighters are going to be recuperating for a while. But in armored combat, I could be in multiple fights in one day, and then the next day I'm fine and I'm going to work, and I don't, besides a few scrapes and bruises, I'm fine.
You might be a little creaky, a little exhausted, but you're not going to be there with cauliflower ear
and giant bruise.
Blood, if there's blood, then somebody messed up, whether it's the armor or a fighter, but...
Right.
This is something that Jay, one of the founders, Jay Brooks, likes to say a lot about this sport, is that, like, why you're gonna kill each other out there swinging these swords at each other, or axe heads that you can still chop a piece of wood with. You're gonna hit me on the back with that, attached to a 4-foot pole. And the surprising thing is that, despite what we might see in films, is that armor actually works. Surprise, surprise. Someone slashes you across the chest, it's just goes right across there, and it doesn't feel like anything. You might feel some pressure, but it's not going to be cutting through that metal.
Right.
So the armor works. You can take, people can have their arm on the railing that we used to fight in, and an axe can be chopping through it, and it's not going to sever their arm or anything.
Right.
And there's a good chance it's not going to break the bone that's ensleeved in the armor that's there.
So it's not as dangerous as people sometimes think of it when they hear of the sport for the first time.
And there are weight restrictions on things too, like maces and I don't think hammers are allowed really at all.
No, there aren't any hammers.
The philosophy behind those is, I don't need to cut through the armor, I just need to break the armor into you.
Right.
So stuff like that, where weapons that were designed to really, get past armor and make it null and void, they're not.
Right.
You shouldn't be using them.
Nobody's fighting with a spear, because there's just no thrusting inside of the sport. Like there's certain things that are done to keep it safe. So next, what are the rules and expectations of this sport? We've talked a little bit like how there's no thrusting, but if I were to want to get into this sport, what should I expect when I get into a ring with another person and I'm going to fight? Like, where do I get this armor? Can I just go and buy it from,
Amazon?
Yeah, Amazon.
Don't do that.
Or some like thrift store. You see some helmet that's in there, and you're like, "Oh, cool! Do I now have a helmet for armored combat?"
Antique shop pseudo armor in the window.
Right. Like, what are the expectations for me? How much? Okay, first question about expectations. How much money should I expect to be spending in order to be able to do armored combat?
So I'm going to go ahead and say the thing that we like to tell all our members, some of whom are better listeners than others. But we like to say, like, when you first get into armored combat, you found it on the internet, you watched this video, whatever, you saw it at an event, the first thing to do is find a local team. So don't spend any money. Find a local team. And in New England, we have a lot of them. We're lucky. Other places, it's like one team, 500 miles, no one. Next thing is go to a practice. Like, actually see what it's like to learn how to do this stuff. Because when we're practicing, maybe in our club it's a little bit different because we like to do so much duels work stuff. But other teams, they'll do a lot more time working on different skills where you don't need to have the armor on for a practice. You're still working on physical fighting skills like grappling, grabbing each other. And people might be doing that with like a gi on or karate gear, I guess. Or they'll have what we call soft kit, which is essentially a padded armor that's a couple $100 to keep you safe. Then if you know that this sport is something that you're into and you're like, I've been going to practice, I love it. Maybe someone let you try on their armor and do a fight in it. At that point, it's like, okay, let's start thinking about how to put together the equipment. So I don't need to wait so long to be able to get in there and do these fights because I'm training, I'm going to practices, I've felt what it's like, and I know I can take getting hit in this and not have a panic attack. and you know that you're committed. If you get to that point and you want to buy yourself some armor, you're looking at about the lowest you can probably go. Like honestly, if you're really looking for the cheapest thing, is I'm guessing around 1,500, and then it goes up from there. I'd say an average is probably around $3,000 to $4,000 for the average person if you're buying new stuff. There's a secondhand market, but all this gear is generally handmade from crafters in Ukraine and Poland, a lot of like the Eastern European countries. These people have been doing this longer because it's an international sport, so they have a lot more experience with making this gear, and so that's where we typically buy our stuff from. Is from individuals who are kind of known in the community now who put this stuff together.
Just really quick, I guess we should probably touch on this, and we kind of missed it in the first bit. Should mention that armored combat as a sport is fairly new to the United States,
That's a good point.
but has been around in Europe for a really long time, as far as I am aware.
Yeah, I think it was another like a decade before the U.S. jumped in. I think so.
Yeah. So a lot of gear and equipment comes from Europe, just because
That's kind of where it began.
Right. It didn't really come to the United States until like the transitional 80s, 90s, right?
I'm not 100% sure of when it transitioned over here. It actually came over with Jay Brooks. He brought it over. But
He's from the Knights Hall.
From the
down in
Knights Hall, which
Nashua.
is a big group in Nashville where they actually have a gym where people can go and train.
Yeah.
There, anyone can go and train. First class is free.
Yep.
So
They're great. And they will teach you something.
Yeah.
Like the gold medalists all across in that place. So like they're great.
But Garrett had a good point here, which I want to just mention again, that in the U.S. it is kind of new. So this being on TV might be the first time you've ever heard of this for folks who are going to watch this. But this is it's an international sport where there are big, like a small Olympics, we'll say. But there are big tournaments where you have like a Chinese team, an Australian team, New Zealand team. Folks from South America are getting into it now. Europe, obviously, all over the place. Russia used to be a big competitor. They were one of the founding members of like getting this sport alive, Russia and Ukraine. But obviously, Russia's not allowed to play anymore. Let's just put it that way.
They're in timeout.
Yeah. So a lot of the sport is very, pro-Ukraine. A lot of us get stuff from there. A lot of the members, even in New Hampshire, have friends over there. So they're very supportive of that.
This
of what
helmet
they're
came
going
from
through.
Ukraine.
Yeah, helmet did.
Yep.
So yeah, it's international. There's fighters in England and all over the place. And so once a year there will be a big international tournament that will have the best teams and the best individual fighters all get together in one place to win gold.
And so, so what other expectations should I have? Let's say I've been practicing with a group now, and I did buy the armor like we just talked about, and I spent that money, and I got like what I need in order to be able to fight. What are fights going to be like? Like, what when I get in the ring, how long should I expect to be fighting for, and who am I going to be fighting? Is this like how does gender work inside of the sport when it comes to like male female teams and all that type of stuff? What should I expect this sport to be like?
I just the number thing you want to expect is everybody's really looking to have fun.
That's a good point.
So an expectation that a lot of people have is, don't go into the ring thinking, I just want to hurt this person. Go into the ring thinking, I'm going to have fun and we're going to see who's a better fighter.
Right. Yeah, I think that's a really good point to make. That's something that I learned real quickly that I was very happy about, because I'm not an overly aggressively competitive person where I dislike other people that I'm competing against. So when I found that everybody in the sport was very handshaky, huggy about like getting into a fight with someone, like, oh, I heard I'm fighting you in a couple minutes. That's cool. Okay, good game. Like, I'm really excited. Very, very supportive community. And so don't go into it thinking you're trying to be like the tough guy who thinks that they're better than others. Like, people will usually be like, chill out. We're here to have fun. nobody here is like making a living off of this. Just have some fun, man.
Yeah.
So yeah, what else if I'm looking to get into this sport?
So yeah, when you're stepping into the ring, and we're going to talk mostly about duels right now, but we can talk about melees, which is another form of fighting later today or something, or later in the show.
Yeah,
but,
some other episode.
But you're stepping into the list. That's the name for the ring that you're fighting in, and you have usually the most average type of fighting we do right now is 3 60-second rounds. We'll usually do a 60-second break in between each round. And that will be, best of the two rounds. Whoever wins 2 of the rounds usually is the winner of that. If you have ties, then they'll bring it into a 4th round, into a 5th round, the legendary 17th round. That's terrible. Doesn't happen very often, but when you're getting into that ring and you're going to fight into that list, and you're standing in your corner, there are 2 things that you're going to be fighting when you're picking up that sword or that sword and shield or axe or whatever you have. You're going to be fighting the other person, being like, I hope I've been training well enough that I really know what I'm doing. I know my combos. I know how to let my body take over and react when I see them do something. And you're also going to be fighting the armor that you're wearing, which is a huge part of this sport, which is why, it's totally different than boxing or MMA, because they just have their gloves and their shorts or whatever. But we're wearing a 60 to 80 whatever pounds on our bodies, essentially holding 15 pounds in front of us as a guard, not even swinging 15 pounds, and hoping that you can have the stamina to do 3 full 1-minute rounds with someone who is not only just standing there like going tap, 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 but pushing into you, kicking you, maybe grabbing you, and it's extremely exhausting. I can't stress enough how tiring that experience is.
Yeah, that is an expectation that I try to tell people. It is exhausting.
It'll fatigue your entire body because it's not just having weights in your hands or on your ankles like you're running down the road. And, you're like, I want to train a little bit harder, I'll put some ankles. It's weights across your entire body.
Mm-hmm. Each step, each movement is being weighed down with extra weight than what you would just normally be. And just the continuous action of the combat is very tiring. And so the number one thing I recommend to people is get that cardio up.
And it would be one thing if you were essentially just wearing a weighted vest or something the whole time that you're doing this fight. But now, how about you take away 80% of your visibility and you put that thing on,
right,
where you just have a little slit and some dots here. And how about you also take away, a ton of your breathing ability, where it's like you're breathing through a snorkel, where you're exhaling, you're tired, you're fatigued, and you can feel the air rushing back into your face, and you're trying to suck in fresh oxygen through those little holes at the same time, with the chin strap and 20 pounds on your head. Your chest isn't able to expand all the way because you have that metal, kind of putting pressure on your back and on your front, and it's there's a term called the helmet horrors, which I'm sure you have both felt at this point. I felt certainly, where you have your helmet on, and this happens to a lot of new fighters, but you get really tired, you feel like you can't breathe, your chest can't expand, you can't get air in, and you just start to have a panic attack in the helmet, and people want to try and rip the thing off, but you've got it's a complicated strap mechanism to keep those things in there, and you have these metal mitts on your hands that can't have the finesse to take the thing off. It might even be strapped to your back too. We have another strap that goes onto the back plate to keep the helmet from coming off. And so you just can't get out of it, So people will really panic, I'm suffocating.
But it's fun.
But it's fun. I forgot about that part. Yeah. Oh yeah, sell it. Sell.
Everybody that does this sport has a PhD, and trust me, bro, it's fun.
It's a lot of fun, and it really is. You have these expectations of it being exhausting. You're gonna get a little bit beat up. You're gonna have some bruises and some cuts, but it is so much fun, and it's a wonderful community. The people that I've met so far inside of the sport are wonderful people that are all very supportive of each other. Now, last thing that I want to hit on today is June 1st. Yeah. We actually have an event that's coming up on June 1st called Battle with Bands, and it's happening inside of Bellows Falls. down on Mill Street, in between Anastasia's Closet and the Flatiron Cafe. There's a small little road that goes down, that's Mill Street, and there's a park down there. And down there, I'm working with Ezra Beach, and he's taking over kind of the musical component of the event, where he's wrangling together a bunch of musicians that are going to be playing on one part of the park, and I'm wrangling together all the fighters that we're going to have inside of a list, a hay bale list, like we did at Retreat Farm when we had the Cheese Cup last year for VAC. And we're going to be having us fighting over there. And so people will be able to come down, purchase tickets, which you can get online at the Bellows Falls Opera House website, because we're doing our ticketing through their software. So by supporting this event, you are also supporting the Bellows Falls Opera House because they're making money off of the ticket sales that we're doing online. So it is a community event. We're trying to get stuff like this going annually. And I think this will be a lot of fun. We want to get some of the local businesses involved, like the Opera House will be selling popcorn, candy, and soda during the event, so people can go up and get some of that, bring it back down, watch the show. I know, Colby, you're not actually going to be able to be there during that event because of your gigs that you work, which is sad, very sad, but we will make sure to try to get you there for future ones. We have prize pools for the fighters as well who are going to be taking part. I've got about 20 fighters that are going to be coming to this event and participating in this fight, and having a dinner at Popolo's afterwards that maybe we can have open to some of the public. I don't know yet. We'll have to figure that out. But there'll be opportunities to meet the fighters, to be able to talk with them. Garrett, I think that'll be your first event that you'll be fighting in.
That'll be that event. We're planning on being my first time fighting in a tournament.
Yeah, like thinking you'll have a full kit ready by then, and it's a tournament, so there are going to be winners because of the prize pools that we have. That like Cobco Arena Games over in Charlestown is one of our sponsors for this event, and they donated a bunch of product from their store. So there's like these Warhammer minis and Dungeons and Dragons books and Magic cards that are going to be up for grabs during the tournament for fighters to be able to win. And there is a lot of overlap between nerds and armored combat. Those two things do seem to fit well together. But yeah, so we've got Cobco sponsoring us.
Correlation, not causation, but if you do the sport, you likely also
are a nerd.
Do some nerd stuff.
Yeah, probably.
And that's okay.
That is okay. It's a very supportive community and it's ready to take you in. Now, eventually down the line, I want to have an episode that talks a little bit more about non-men being in the sport. So I want to get into that eventually. But I think us ending on that June 1st is good. So any of you want to say anything before we wrap up?
I just want to close it out with the wise words of my grandmother when she realized how much I'd spent on the sport. If you're buying this stuff, she used more profane language. Yeah.
Yep.
If you're spending money on this stuff, you're not spending money on drugs.
It's true. It's true. Do you have anything to say?
Nope. How can I beat that?
Well, I just want to say, if you want to get involved in the sport, reach out to me, worldunderwonder@gmail.com, and we can try to get you situated on our team. We're always looking for more members at VAC in Brattleboro.
Yep, that's Vermont Armored Combat, and we have a Facebook page, and reach out to us through Messenger, and we'll get back to you if you want to do this thing.
All right. Thank you.